one.
Hello, good morning, good evening. My name is Alex Mejia, and I have the pleasure and the honor of representing UNITAR, the United Nations Institute for Training and Research. I am speaking to you out of Geneva, Switzerland. I would like to welcome you all to the seminar entitled Agripreneurship and MSME Resurgence that UNCTAD, UNCTAD, and UNITAR have jointly organized for your benefit. We have an impressive array of panelists today, and we also have two senior members of the United Nations leadership that will deliver proper inaugural remarks. But as you can see on the screen, the most important thing perhaps is that we have invited 4 distinguished panelists that will honor us today, sharing information and perspectives on the role of entrepreneurship and particularly agripreneurship in post-COVID resurgence. Before we get to the panel proper, I would like to welcome you with a short introductory presentation to put the topic in perspective. And again, I speak to you on behalf of UNITAR. So, if you look at what has happened with the coronavirus pandemic now with us for more than a year, it's very sad to remember where we are, but we do this to honor the people that are suffering and have suffered with this. And the numbers speak for themselves. As of yesterday, 24th of March, our colleagues at the World Health Organization, very close to where I speak to you here in Geneva, have reported officially that almost 124 million confirmed cases around the world are in existence. And they have also recorded that 2,727,837 people have died because of the COVID until 2:41 p.m. of yesterday. So you see there that we are still suffering and in the middle of this pandemic that went from being a public health crisis to becoming a social crisis and indeed an economic crisis. So this compounded crisis have made UNCTAD and UNITAR join forces to focus again on how we should build resurgence when this pandemic is over. Next, please. To introduce the topic, allow me to say that trade, investment, growth, and employment are all affected, and the crisis will have an impact on the achievement of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, the main mandate that we have as UN agencies, UNCTAD and UNITAR. Likewise, as with any crisis, the situation has become even worse in developing countries where the stability or growth for startups and MSMEs has been significantly endangered. Every business that has been forced to close leads to multiple stories of unemployment, economic and social dislocation, as well as a staggering uncertainty. It remains paramount that governments, in partnership with different stakeholders, dedicate their support to drive competitiveness of micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises, MSMEs, with a particular focus, of course, on those small businesses in developing countries. Next, please. So, one of the ways to maintain the economy open, which is the message of be prepared as soon as it fully opens post-COVID, is agripreneurship. The experts will be talking about that. Ms. Tatiana Krylova from UNCTAD, the co-host of this webinar, will actually brief you in more technical terms. But just so everyone in this webinar understand what we mean when we say agripreneurship, the idea is that this term refers to entrepreneurship in agriculture. Why the transition to agripreneurship? Why make it more specific? Because agricultural markets have been experiencing a massive transition within the last 30 years from local market trade to a global market system. The result, unfortunately, is that local farmers are competing against the world's largest agricultural corporations without the same type of tools, resources, and skill. So we postulate that one of the solutions is entrepreneurship in the agricultural SME realm or universe. Farmers need to become entrepreneurs and adopt an agripreneurship model that will help them create their local clusters and start increasing their production as a synergy and not as individual local farmers. Next. In introducing the topic, allow me to also postulate what is to be an agripreneur. Changing the mindset of a local farmer to increase production, but as UNCTAD will explain, I am sure this is part of a framework and a holistic process indeed. However, the key in the shift of thinking is understanding the role of the farmer entrepreneur in the new market, identifying all the potential clients of this new and innovative type of entrepreneurship, agripreneurship, as well as in defining the business idea behind the value chain. This means that the farming enterprise needs to maintain the percentage of the value they provide in every single transaction. So entrepreneurship is about high quality and value. Next, please. Now, for us at the United Nations, the Sustainable Development Goals, as I just mentioned, the 17 SDGs that we call are part of Agenda 2030 are critical in the upcoming decade until the year 2030 proper, so as to fight poverty and increase the standard of living of citizens around the world. The commitment of a country to adopt agripreneurship as a strategy for MSMEs is a major driving force in reducing poverty as well as creating sustainable employment and economic growth. Next, please. Now, we also want to introduce briefly and on the surface only the concept of agricultural value chain. So we put agripreneurship under this light. I'm not going to read the whole, but you see that there is a process since you have inputs that are going through agriculture, then the growing, the production process proper, the processing and packaging, the storage and distribution, and the end markets. And you see that many actors and many organizations play a role, but micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises should be at the core of this planning for resurgence post-COVID. Next, please. I also wanted to conclude, I think it's 2 more slides only, to remind you of what we understand as value chain. In this overview in the agricultural sector, you see what happened from land, labor, water, technology, production, post-harvest, handling, to processing, to markets. And to the right, you see an application of that value chain overview in which the global food supply chain indeed transforms agricultural products into what goes into the hands of a consumer. To do that sustainably, to do that protecting micro, small, and medium enterprises is critical, and this is the dialogue that we would like to have today. Next, please. And I believe this to be the last. We simply wanted to also introduce the concept of how important the use of technology in the agri-food chain is, from precision farming systems to innovation in logistics, to food safety and traceability. We will discuss this in more detail, but I think this is enough as a introduction to the topic. And with that, I would like now to proceed according to the agenda to the inaugural remarks, first from UNITAR and then from UNCTAD. So allow me to offer the floor to His Excellency Luis Gallegos Chiriboga. Ambassador Gallegos is the chairman of the Board of Trustees of UNITAR, and he's speaking from Quito, Ecuador. Excellency, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Alex. Distinguished panelists, Madame Kudlova, dear guests, it's my pleasure to deliver these words of welcome to all of you on the second online event of UNCTAD UNITAR webinar series. The coronavirus pandemic has affected the world and its population from health to economics as an unseen before scale. It has a stark reminder of the need of cooperation across borders, sectors, and generations. Our response will determine how fast the world recovers, whether we achieve the Sustainable Development Goals, and how well we handle pressing challenges, from the climate crisis to pandemics, inequities, new forms of violence, and rapid change in technology and in our populations. More specifically, if we have actually learned from 2020, the world should focus on 5 transformations of our collective future. Transformation of the health systems, with the focus on universal health coverage, publicly funded especially for the most vulnerable. Transformation of the energy system, with a focus on renewables, on efficiency, and access to all modern energy systems. Transformation of our food system to tackle starvation, hunger, obesity, micronutrient deficiencies, essentially to sustainable farming at scale with better management of water. Transformation of the educational system with better pedagogical and methodological approaches, building on the success of social media and the gaming industry. We have the technology to reach millions at a very low cost. Transformation of the finance industry, especially banks and asset management and investors, to pursue green pathways in their entire operations. As the COVID-19 pandemic is spreading around the globe, entrepreneurs, their ventures, and their societies are facing unprecedented challenges. Unemployment among the world is 1.2 billion young people, is far higher than adults, and COVID-19 has worsened their outlook for job prospects. Estimates dating from before the pandemic suggested that 600 million jobs would have to be created in the next 15 years to meet youth unemployment needs. Now, that number has become larger. Yes, there are challenges, but there are also opportunities for entrepreneurships to take the advantage and create future jobs and roles of the economy. Under the circumstances, entrepreneurs have looked for creative solutions to keep their activities afloat, addressing different defies that they are experiencing, different challenges as they and differences that they are experiencing. Entrepreneurs are a special breed of people and individuals who challenge and are accelerating than far inducing, who respond to changes of pivotal rather than digging in their heels, and who see opportunities where others see roadblocks. It is almost certain that the way entrepreneur business are affected today will have an impact on how entrepreneurship is perceived at the job choices of the future. The changes we observe today may be double-edged swords. We are seeing today the potential of democratizing entrepreneurship and creating new entrepreneurial role models that people can move easily and identify easily with. This would ultimately lower the threshold of entrepreneurship for many and stimulate people to start their own business. With so many large institutions shredding talented and well-qualified employees, perhaps this crisis and its aftermath will encourage more people to take on the risks associated with entrepreneurship when they think they're identified or discovered an opportunity. There are so many new needs and gaps to fill. The micro, small, and medium enterprises tend to be much faster at adapting and filling gaps and more established companies, which would be a reminder to us to reconsider how we value innovation and entrepreneurial system. The use of technology is fundamental. In this light, as chairman of the board of UNITAR, I would like to congratulate the organizers, especially our colleagues from UNCTAD, and send them a warm wishes to all the participants. Lastly, I want to thank all of you for joining us today. I am sure the speeches, discussion, and presentations will prove to be an enlightening experience. I wish you success in the deliberations ahead. Thank you very much.
Thanks to you, Excellency. Thank you for properly inaugurating this important webinar on behalf of UNITAR and the Board of Trustees of the Institute. With that, we will continue with the agenda, and it is my great privilege to offer the floor to Ms. Tatiana Krylova, the head of the Enterprise Branch of the Division for Investment and Enterprise at UNCTAD. Ms. Krylova.
Thank you, Alex. Excellency, distinguished panelists, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon and good morning. On behalf of UNCTAD, a warm welcome to you to our 6th webinar of the series of webinars on the role of entrepreneurship and post-COVID-19 resurgence. It is organized as part of the project titled the Global Initiative towards post-COVID-19 resurgence of the MSME sector, or we call it the SME Search Project, of the framework of United Nations for the immediate socio-economic response to COVID-19. So as you already heard, the webinar organized by UNCTAD jointly with UNITAR, and I would really like to thank Excellency Gallegos for insightful introductory remarks to our discussions today. I also would like to thank you, Alex, for providing such a great context of discussions on the role of agribusiness and SME resurgence. So again, today the webinar will focus on the role of agripreneurship in the MSME resurgence. So the COVID-19 pandemic is of course disrupting agricultural value chains, which in turn threatens the livelihoods of farming communities and food security in general. To prevent the food crisis and reduce the negative impact of COVID-19 on the global economy, the continuing functioning of food supply chains is critical. About 2.5 billion people depend on agriculture production system for their livelihoods. They contribute to more than 80% of the value of the world's food. Yet, I would like to also mention here that they control only 12% of all agricultural land. So smallholder farmers also play a key role in enhancing the environmental sustainability, including climate change mitigation by protecting biodiversity in agriculture. So in this context, agripreneurship has a great potential to contribute to addressing a range of aspects or different aspects of social and economic development, such as on the one hand, issues of a general nature like income generation, creating new jobs, poverty reduction, and on the other hand, more specifically to improvements of nutrition, health, and overall food security in the national economies and also local communities, including in rural areas. In this regard, I am very pleased to stress that at UNCTAD we have facilitated an agripreneurship angle of our EMPROTEC program that helps to mobilize and unleash entrepreneurship potential of people based on the EMPROTEC behavioral approach. So this is a flagship program of UNCTAD. We mentioned it before as part of our overall entrepreneurship promotion program that we also host at UNCTAD. So to facilitate this agripreneurship aspect of the program, we have recently tailored EMPROTEC training to farmers by updating our course on farming as a business and adapting it also into French and Spanish. And through ongoing serious activities, also on this project that I already mentioned, SME Search in post-COVID-19, so through this series of training activities, we will make and we're already making this tool available to our network of more than 40 centers, 40 EMPROTEC centers around the world, including one also in Ecuador. So you will also hear today an extraordinary success story of one of our participants of the EMPROTEC program and one of winners of initiative which we call EMPROTEC Women in Business Awards. So we had the 7th edition of it just December 2020. So and one of our winners is Miss Amala, who would share today her own experience on what an entrepreneur can do to make entrepreneurship work for achieving a better living and nutrition in the community and in the country. So today we will discuss what could be done to leverage entrepreneurship strategies and measures by policymakers and also entrepreneurs' action to build productive capacities in the agriculture sector, to support farmers' awareness, but not only awareness, but also adoption of business models which would enable them to build successful, profitable, and sustainable businesses that will also facilitate green, resilient, and inclusive recovery in the agriculture sector and economies in general in COVID and post-COVID-19 environment. So we do hope that discussions sparked by today's impressive panel of speakers will help to provide some answers to many challenges in this area that existed before but they're really highlighted and put in the spotlight by the current crisis of COVID-19 pandemic. And as always, we thank you, distinguished panelists, participants, dear colleagues from UNITAR, and Alex and your team for your contribution to this common effort and for excellent cooperation that we're really experiencing over, these already 7 webinars that we conducted for the last 7 months. So our next webinar, which will take place on April 22, also at 3 p.m., will discuss how fintech can also contribute to the green, resilient, and inclusive recovery of MSMEs. So just please put it in your calendar not to miss our next event in 1 month. So with this, I would conclude and really look forward to productive and interactive discussions today, as we already had through these previous webinars. And so we also look forward to our further cooperation. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Tatiana. It's indeed a pleasure to work under your leadership and with the contributions of your team. We are going to start the panel proper. And one of the panelists will have to depart early, but we will make it work. Now, before I do so, because we live in the age of social media and it's important to keep everyone informed, we will take a group picture now instead of doing it at the end. I kindly request all the panelists to put their camera and the interpreters, if you want to, and to stop screen sharing, Julia, so we can get a gallery of all the participants. So while we do that, I also want to remind all of the participants that we have indeed translation to French and Spanish. So you can hear this in English, French, and Spanish simultaneously. You simply go at the bottom of your screen and you see where interpretation says. So Julia, can you please help us to put everyone on the screen so we can have a group picture and then we open the panel? Who should do that? Is it you or Philippe?
Absolutely. It's actually, if I can do that for everybody and take the picture. And if you go to the top right-hand corner and go to view, select gallery view, and that's how we can all be on one image. Perfect.
Absolutely. So let's make sure that we take an official picture now. And with that, of course, we can go to Philippe. Can you help us? And Ms. Linda Walters, if you can, and Marta, if you can connect your camera or drop the call, because we will have a black dot there. Philippe, if you are listening, thank you very much. We will do it as soon as Philippe connects. Thank you. Yes, so this will be the official picture, and if you can smile for the camera, that would be excellent. Thank you so very much. His Excellency, again, Minister Gallegos, thank you for joining us. You are welcome to stay as long as you can, but we know you have a busy agenda. And for the rest of us, we will continue now with the panel, again, with this reminder that there is interpretation. Very good. So, if you can put again the agenda on the screen, Julia, will thank you very much. Allow me to start the panel now, inviting Ms. Julian Nyamahunge Omala, the founder and managing director of Delight Uganda Limited. Quite an honor to have you, Ms. Julian. I have read a little about your success story, how you have actually contributed to society, creating and innovating. It's quite an honor to offer you the floor to hear your perspectives on this. So, Ms. Julian, you have the floor now.
Thank you. All protocols observed. I'm happy to share today my story, but it's true that COVID-19 has affected the entire group in agriculture value chain. Countries which has developed the agriculture value chain and sector have been highly affected by the lockdown and imposed restrictions. We have two kinds of effects. Exporting countries and importing countries have both been affected. Those who are exporting, they've been exporting their products, getting money, and those who have been importing have been depending on the other countries. But the effect has affected both, and which created a challenge. And that challenge we have for us as entrepreneurs, we have to look at how do we come in to bridge in the gap? How do we come in as local entrepreneurs? Because of those challenges, we decided to concentrate on our local ways of how to solve the problem. One, at our Delight Farm Institute, where we train the younger people on how to produce. We first organize ourselves at our farm, and starting from the nursery to the orchard, up to the post-harvesting challenges, up to value addition. After mastering it right, we decided to engage the community. We onboard the younger people. They come at our farm institute. We train them in the farm how to do it. We give them all the skills. They go back in their homes and they concentrate and do it better. Then they produce the quality fruits, and we create market for them. We don't only concentrate on fruits, but we also intercrop with other season crops in our orchard, like the oil seeds and the cereals, so that the farmers can get quick money from the intercrop and wait for long-term money from the fruits. Because of the challenges caused by COVID-19, it has helped us as local people to find a local remedy. How can we solve our problems and concentrate on production and skill the informal people, so that we can all produce and have enough for ourselves, for our own consumption, and also for sale. And we also looked at how can the government put in the policies and help the people. For us, we looked at it that we need to produce enough and sell the surplus. Every household must produce for itself and also to store for value addition. We also had to engage the government to ensure that they have storages where they can do the value addition, bring in the equipment for the value addition, and ensure that we also have enough. And especially in Uganda, we encourage that there must be a way of helping the community, especially the informal sector, to concentrate more in production, but also the formal sector, those who are 30%, to come and bridge the gap between the informal sector and the formal sector. Because back in Uganda, you see that it is the informal sector who engage in production. And when they engage in production, at times they don't know it all. So we are trying to bridge the gap between the informal sector and the formal sector, the informal and the formal, to work together to narrow the gap, ensure that at least we have enough for what we can use for as local product, what we can use in the country and what we can export. And also as policymakers, I'm one of the leaders. We've been trying to look at the way like Operation Wealth Creation in Uganda. Government has a budget to buy seedlings, to buy seeds, and also to support the local people in production. And also for us as a private sector, we work with government and development partners to ensure that we concentrate more in production, especially in our complete value chain, especially to understand how to do it better and how to produce the quality and the quantity which can be enough, and also to create our own employment, especially the younger people. After we train them at our farm institute, they go back, produce, and also create employment for other people, for themselves, because we've been having a problem of unemployment. But with this lockdown, we have to look back, how can we create our own employment than depending or maybe looking for government to give us employment. In a complete value chain of agriculture, it involves so many people. So all the stakeholders has to come together during this time of COVID and see how can we produce more, given that like in Uganda, we have 2 seasons in the year, we have abundant land, and we have a lot of youth actually, which are like 70%. So for us as Delight Uganda, we concentrated on skilling and on how to do it and ensure that we create market. We even donated the land to the cooperative society, 4 acres, where we have built a common user facility. So for those people who are in production, they can produce and we come and we bulk and we sell together as a cooperative society. So most of our time has been, how can we depend on our own production than depending on imported things, like the way it was, we used to eat a lot of rice, imported rice, everything was imported. But during this time of COVID, we concentrated in production and the efficiency of the complete value chain. What are those gaps which we can bridge? How can we help other people who did not mind on production? So to me, I can say that the lockdown has helped us to concentrate more on our core business, and which is our strength, and also government now. The challenges of the lockdown has helped government also to concentrate on their responsibilities. And for us as local entrepreneurs, like me as Julian, since last year March, the lockdown came in, I decided to settle in the farm, and I have managed at least to skill 6,000 young people. Each has opened up at least a garden and they have planted the fruits. And I'm the chairperson of the cooperative society. I have emphasized that people must take care of their orchard and must ensure that we produce the quality fruits which meets the European standards, and also the intercrop, because as we wait for the fruits to grow, we have concentrated more on the intercrop, like the oil seeds. We plant the granules, which helps us to fix nitrogen in the orchard, and also we do the value addition. We produce the peanut butter out of it, and also like the cereals. We sell the cereals and supply the breweries. Most of the time, we as the local entrepreneurs, we have seen how can we support ourselves, and depending either on government or other countries. So I look the only way is to join hands, work together, and also to do I can say the technology transfer from the professionals. People come at our institute, and we also invite the practitioners, so that the younger people who did not concentrate on how to do it right, now we sit together and we produce and we learn from each other and we do it better. Our products now are better than the way it was, and many people have picked a lot of interest to come and join us. And like our model has been now accepted and duplicated in other districts and in other sectors. To me, I think the complete value chain, if we look at their challenges and we skill on each side, each challenges and each stages, and everybody knows how to do it, that efficiency, I'm sure we shall have enough and stop depending on other countries, and also trying to understand what is the demand. You produce according to the demand, what is the need of the world, what is that thing we can do better. Also, that lockdown has to give us the time to focus on our challenges, local challenges, and find the local way of handling it. Even the COVID-19 itself, we had to find a way to have the local remedies, like you have the lemon, you have the tangauzi, you have the ginger, those garlic, onions. How can we handle each country, handle its challenges and solve those problems? And finally, as I conclude, as a leader, I've tried to talk to government and talk to the development partners to bridge the gap between the informal sector and the formal sector, so that we can all work together and realize our challenges and ensure that the problems are locally solved at the farm, not in the offices. And we signed an MOU with the Ministry of Agriculture to work together to empower the community. And it has helped since that time, because we are training every time the youth are at the farm, and we are very happy that people know how to produce now quality fruits, quality oil seeds, and quality cereals. And I'm sure that if we can continue with that, we shall have more than enough actually, and we shall export. Uganda will be a food basket. Thank you.
Thanks to you, Ms. Julian. Thank you for sharing the perspective of what you are doing in Uganda and beyond. Particularly, thank you for helping to bridge that gap, this separation that you correctly mentioned between public and private, between formal and informal sectors, and the need for capacity building. I thank you for that. And with that, allow me to continue introducing the next speaker. But before I do so, we appreciate very much that he's with us, but he has a busy agenda. He will also need to leave right after. So I will pause the panel to have some questions and answers, at least one or two, before Mr. Chandra goes. So with that, let me properly introduce him. Mr. Ranveer Chandra is the Chief Scientist of Microsoft Azure Global. Is the founder of Farmbeat project at Microsoft Research in 2015, and it is my great pleasure to offer him the floor. Ranveer, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you, Alex. And it's a pleasure to be here and talking at this event. So before I start, let me introduce myself. As Alex mentioned, I'm Ranveer Chandra. I've been at Microsoft. Well, this is my 16th year at Microsoft. And my background is not in agriculture. My background is a PhD in computer science. I did that PhD at Cornell, and I joined Microsoft after that. And at Microsoft, I started the Farmbeat project. The reason I started it was, of course, to help address the world's food problem. And my exposure to agriculture came through the time when I was growing up. I grew up in India, that my grandparents used to live in Bihar. For people from India, they would relate to this. This is a state in northern part of India. And every summer and winter vacation, I would go to my grandparents' farm. Back then, I did not like anything to do with agriculture. These farms, they were remote. They did not have electricity. They did not have toilets. Yet I had to spend the summer and winter vacations with my grandparents. But spending that time exposed me to a lot of problems in these farms. Farmers used to use very primitive forms of agriculture. There was extreme poverty. And that is what led me to start the Farmbeat project. Every project I've started at Microsoft has had this theme of going and impacting the smallholder farmers, the people in the rural population. Actually, the goal of Farmbeat is much more. Our goal is to help address the world's food problem. That is, how do you feed the growing population of the world, not just feed, but give them good, nutritious food without harming the planet? And we believe the future of agriculture is data-driven. That is, if you could use data to augment a farmer's knowledge, you could improve efficiencies. You could make them more productive. You could help them adopt sustainable agriculture practices. And it is not just about the farm. We believe the entire food supply chain, all the way from seed companies to chemical companies, to the farm, the production, to the distribution, the logistics companies, to the food distribution, the retailers, the entire food pipeline can be made more data-driven. Once you start getting data, you can then apply the benefits of artificial intelligence on top of this data to then improve efficiencies throughout the entire supply chain. So that is the vision of what we started out to do as part of Farmbeat. And of course, if you do this, if you start getting data from each part of the supply chain, for example, if a farmer knows what's going on in the farm, not just what's happening now, what happened in the past, and what's going to happen in the future, if you can start making predictions, a farmer could start making more informed decisions about what's going on in the farm. For example, when I started the Farmbeats project, I went and did a lot of interviews. I met several farmers. I volunteered on farms. What I realized is that every farmer I talked to knew a lot about their farm. They have been farming there for decades, if not for generations. They knew one farmer could pick the farm and pick the soil and touch the soil and know what's going on. Another farmer could taste the soil and say what's going on. Yet, despite the fact they know so much, the decisions they took about when to plant, when to harvest, when to apply water, when to apply fertilizer, all of these were based on guesswork. So, as part of the Farmbeats project, our goal is to bring the benefits of data, benefits of AI to growers worldwide. So the thing is, despite the fact that the benefits of data-driven agriculture are well known, the technologies haven't really taken off. And the biggest reason they haven't taken off is the cost of existing data-driven agriculture solutions. These solutions are expensive. Even a single sensor that you have to put in the farm, it's unaffordable for most of the growers worldwide. So as we set out to do this work, we started in research. We started looking at ways to make data-driven agriculture more affordable. So we looked at some of the most fundamental problems affecting the farmers worldwide. One of the biggest problems was the cost of unaffordable internet. That is, in the current world, more than 40% of the world's population do not have access to the internet. And this is huge. And it is not necessarily because there is no cellular signal in that location. If you look at GSMA reports, there is signal for 90% of the population. It is just that it is not affordable, which makes 40% of the world, like 3 billion people, unable to connect, and many of them are smallholder farmers. To make internet connectivity more affordable, we used a prior research of mine, which I've been doing since 2005, a technology called TV white spaces. What TV white spaces refers to is the use of unused TV channels to send and receive data. You know, when you browse through TV, this is TV using antennas. On certain channels, you get a transmission. On the other channels, all you get is white noise. We had developed a technology where we could take a Wi-Fi signal and put it in noisy TV channels in a way that doesn't interfere with your TV reception in an adjacent channel. So this was one of the technologies we had developed. The interesting thing for this, for agriculture, is that TV towers are in cities. If you go to a farm, most of the TV channels are just white noise. This is nothing coming there. And so the more available TV channels there are, the more available capacity there is. So you can then use it to imagine a Wi-Fi signal that can go several miles and start connecting the grower, start connecting the equipment to provide affordable access in the middle of a farm. We did a lot of other research as well. Another research we did was on how do you, with very few data points, how can you start making intelligent decisions? How can you start making predictions using artificial intelligence? This is another piece of work we did as part of the research. We also looked at another way where how could you get, and a lot of people talk about drones, but drones very quickly become unaffordable for many of the farmers worldwide. We came up with another technology where you could use, say, a helium-filled balloon with a smartphone attached to it, which you can then start using to map different farms and using computer vision and artificial intelligence to bring the benefits of the latest technologies to the growers. In fact, some of you might have seen Bill Gates's video. So there's a farm close to Microsoft campus where we hosted him, and Bill Gates then wrote about this in Gates Notes, and he's carrying this balloon and showing how you could be mapping at really low cost. We are doing a lot of this work. We are continuing to do the research to drive down the cost. At Microsoft, we announced a product called Azure Farmbeats. What Azure Farmbeats is it's a platform which can bring in data from different data streams about a farm. It can be from the farm itself. It can be from remote sensing data, from weather stations. It brings all of these data streams together and allows you to write your AI modules on top, your artificial intelligence modules on top, so that you can start making predictions. You can then start using these predictions to start making much more informed decisions about what's going to happen in the farm and use that to drive your data-driven decisions. In addition to that, so we have multiple tools at Microsoft. I would definitely recommend the audience to go take a look or message me on LinkedIn or any other platform. Would love to get connected with you. The other thing I also wanted to talk about the work we are doing is on sustainability. So Microsoft made a big sustainability announcement last year, our commitment that by 2030, Microsoft is going to be carbon negative. What that means is that we are going to be putting more carbon back into the soil than the amount of carbon that we generate. In fact, we've also made a commitment that by 2050, we are going to put back all the carbon that we've generated ever since Microsoft was founded. Now, one of the ways we are going to achieve this goal is by reducing our own emissions, so our own data centers, our supply chain. But the other thing is we need to purchase carbon credits. And one of the ways, as many of you know, you can put carbon back into soil is by practicing the right agricultural practices. For example, cover cropping, no-till or reduced-till, nutrient management, and so on. So that is another opportunity for farmers worldwide, and also for smallholder farmers, given how many are there, and the potential to enrich soils using the right agricultural practices. So these are things that we are doing at Microsoft. I know this is about UNITAR and UNITAD as well, where one of the things we are doing is we built a Farmbeat Student Kit, which allows to bring data-driven agriculture. The goal of this was to bring data-driven agriculture to students worldwide. We started with the US, where we are working with the FFA, which is the Future Farmers of America, and we've developed a curriculum and a kit using which you could train students even when they are in high school about data, about artificial intelligence, about the benefits of data and AI. How could you use it in your agricultural practices? Of course, we start with students, but you can see how this could be used to drive entrepreneurship as well, to train people on the benefits of data. We believe the future of agriculture is data-driven. And if it is data-driven, we need to make sure that every participant in the agriculture and food supply chain, be it the farmer, be it the distributor, be it the people who are working in warehouses, everyone can benefit, can improve efficiencies if they start using data and AI to drive their decisions. So the way the thing I wanted to leave you with is the way we are going to make this happen is only if all of us, all the stakeholders, be it entrepreneurs, researchers, policymakers, growers, nonprofits, everyone comes together to start making this happen. Just Microsoft by itself we can build some of the tech, but to take this technology to growers worldwide, to the organizations worldwide, to the agronomists worldwide, we need everyone to come together. We need the right policies, we need the right researchers, and we need the right entrepreneurs. Many of you might be on this call. So really looking forward to working with all of you, and thank you for having me on this panel.
Thank you. I sincerely appreciate Dr. Chandra, dear Ranbir, what you have shared and the impressive work that you are doing with Microsoft. We have two questions, one for you, one for the previous panelists, and you kind of already addressed this. One of the participants is asking how best to bridge tech and agriculture in higher education. You just gave us an example, but I wanted to add a little to the complexity of the question to pick your brain, because you are indeed an expert of this. How to finance that? How to finance, a better data-driven revolution at universities? So we empower people, young professionals, to go and then benefit micro, small, and medium enterprises in the agricultural sector. How can we finance that? If you can give us some comments, thank you.
Yeah, I could start, and I think Julia might have suggestions on this too. I think, so to start with, I think we need to have, of course, public sector, private sector, and donors and government organizations, everyone working together to make this happen. One of the things I talk about is having the right policy framework with governments to make this happen. That is, while we are building this technology and while we are trying to build technologies to make data-driven agriculture more affordable, this includes sensors, drones, stuff like that, and also AI. But we still need more innovation to get it to the point where it is affordable by smallholder farmers. And one of the ways it can happen is, the way governments right now subsidize through their policies, they subsidize agriculture equipment, they subsidize some of the inputs. They should be subsidizing data-driven agriculture as well. If they subsidize data-driven agriculture, it will make these technologies much more affordable. They can finance some of these data-driven agriculture solutions. So I think this is one place in which we can make it increase the adoption. The other thing I would mention is that when we talk of data-driven agriculture and the future of that, to enable the true potential of data-driven agriculture, we need data. That is, your artificial intelligence is only as good as the data. And the problem with especially the emerging markets is that this data is scattered, is distributed across multiple stakeholders across the entire supply chain, some with the government, some with the grower, some with the other agencies. So we need a way to bring all of this data together in a trustworthy way, in a privacy preserving way, to bring this data together to drive your artificial intelligence decisions, to bring the benefits of AI to agriculture. Now, the challenge with that is to build this framework, you need cooperation from all the entities who hold the data, be it the financial companies, the farmers themselves, the people in the supply chain, the government. And that is where we need to build. Part of it is a technology problem. That is, how do you build such a secure data sharing framework? And part of it is a policy problem. How do you incentivize and who hosts the data? How do you make sure regulations around data? How do you make sure that the data is not misused by anyone in the supply chain?
Right.
But together, I think with technology and with policy, we believe we can help address this.
Indeed, very much. And let me ask you the final and last question. We know you have to go. And unfortunately, we miss Julia because we also wanted to hear her perspective. But, technology sometimes also has some challenges. This is the question. In the use of technology, this data-driven revolution to better empower micro, small, and medium enterprises in the agricultural sector, you have already given us a holistic view, but let me go into something specific, which is traceability. Can you give us some comments on the use of technology to better add value to a product, an agricultural product, so it's fully traceable all the way to its origin? So people, we see it in Europe, but it's just emerging, right? That people are willing to pay more because they know from where a melon came, just to give you an example. So they know that it doesn't have pesticides, that it doesn't come from a region in which there is no real good standards, and more important than anything is this concept in Europe that I really embrace. I'm from Latin America, we still don't have this, or not to that level. The concept of buy local. I want to buy, I want to know the traceability of a product, so I go and buy from the farmers that are close to me. So how can we use, what have you seen at Microsoft, how can we use data and technology to strengthen traceability for micro, small, and medium enterprises in the agricultural sector, please?
Right. Yeah, no, this is a very important problem, Mr. Alex. I think there is that we need to make, and for multiple reasons, you pointed out about consumers wanting to know where the food came from. It's also for regulators, for food safety. You want to know how the food was grown, where it came from. And most recently, also for sustainability. That is, you want to be able to say that the food that you're eating was grown using the right sustainable agricultural practices. There was no child labor used. It was built using the right practices. And that is, again, one of the big concerns that we are hearing from the companies that we work with. And the way we are going to make that happen, part of it is using technology. We'll have to build technologies like blockchain. Things like blockchain is a bit of a stretch, but similar ledger-based technologies, which can make sure that the data is not tampered with. We need to make sure that that data continues across different organizations in a way that you can trust what you get, making sure that it hasn't been tampered with in any way. The other challenge, though, is a lot of data is captured in the farm, and post-harvest, it is an easier problem. Once you pluck an apple, you can track how that apple went through the supply chain, where it was stored, what temperature it was in, what was the humidity. You can track all of that. But what exactly happened in the farm, and how do you validate and put it as part of, how do you capture it in that token, is something that is still an open problem. And that is where there is a lot of technology work going on, is how do you capture on-farm data and translate it to a token in a way that cannot be tampered with. But that will be addressed. And this, once it's addressed, I think it will address all the problems that we talked about, from food safety to consumer awareness to sustainability. There is a lot of demand for this kind of a transparent supply chain. Of course, there is a policy part of it too, given that this data is crossing different countries. Even within the same country, different countries might have different regulations for food that is grown there. So how do you translate that? How do you capture that? Do you filter out food? So the future of food, I'm very bullish on this data-driven future of food, where it's just like we think of everything will be tagged by data and metadata, and you'll be able to reason a lot about it. And it will make us all healthier. It'll improve efficiencies and drive profitability of growers as well.
Thank you very, very much. We have had the privilege of listening to one of the movers and shakers on the use of technology in this realm. And you have an impressive career, Dr. Chandra, dear Ranveer. I sincerely appreciate that you have taken the time to be with us today. I know that you have to go, but please receive our appreciation before you do so. Thank you.
Thank you.
Very good. Bye-bye. Thanks again. So to continue with the deliberations, let me now offer the floor to Ms. Linda Wolters, Communications Lead for Policy and Outreach Strategies at SEED, a global partnership for action on social and environmental entrepreneurship. Ms. Wolters, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Alex. And sorry, that was quite a mouthful. Let me also express my appreciation for the previous panelists. I think I relate to a lot of what Ms. Julian is saying about the challenges on the ground, and it's also what we hear from our enterprises. And we're also very much looking at data-driven agricultural enterprises. So I think this is great. And I also really appreciate that there was no PowerPoint used by the Microsoft speaker. I can't say that's the case for me. So SEED, on the next slide, maybe briefly, Global Partnership for Action on Sustainable Development, as we said, founded in 2002 by UNEP, UNDP, and YCN. But I guess what's important is that today we fund and support and build a finance and policy ecosystem for social and environmentally focused market-based enterprises. So we work with quite a specific subsegment of MSMEs, which we call eco-inclusive. So these are enterprises which apply and promote green technologies in sectors like renewable energy and waste, agriculture, and sanitation. So actually half of our supported enterprises are in sustainable agriculture. So that's the eco dimension. And then they include low-income people in their value chain as employees, suppliers, and distributors, or even consumers. And that's what we call the inclusive dimension. So if you go to the next slide, I'm not going to talk too much about the severity of COVID because I think we're all living and witnessing it, but I just want to share one statistic, which is of last year when the ILO reported that 75% of SMEs are experiencing or expecting a reduction in revenues that year. And I guess that was last year, but that effect is still felt today. So that's the background to the report that I wanted to share with you on today. So when COVID hit, we interviewed about 30 eco-inclusive enterprises, and we found that, unsurprisingly, those enterprises were really strongly affected by the economic shock of the pandemic. But some enterprises were kind of able to stay afloat by leveraging their assets, their capabilities, their networks, and local relationships, and were able to keep addressing the needs of the communities that they operate in. And this is what we call resilience. So the ability for enterprises to withstand socioeconomic or environmental shocks. So we looked at 6 factors, which are here on the slide here. Business resilience, enterprises pivoting to provide new products or services needed by the market and being able to switch easily. So we saw a lot of enterprises, for example, that were quickly switching the way they distributed or moving to digital distribution platforms. Financial resilience, so it's about being prepared and having a cost structure that is flexible, and that means that you can quickly adjust pricing and payment conditions, and perhaps work with partners to work with smaller installments, for example. Organizational resilience, so this is mainly about digital aspects we see. So really, COVID obviously is accelerating digitalization within practically every organizations, and our agro-eco-inclusive enterprises are no difference, but those that kind of really understand these digital aspects of their key activities and are able to move services such as marketing or logistics, etc., online, they're in much better shape versus those that don't have those skills or channels. The ecosystem piece, so this is about, basically very short that enterprises that are strongly embedded in our ecosystem are in much better shape because they can rely on partners and support and financial aid. And then maybe to touch on market resilience as well. So the impact of the pandemic, and we heard it from Ms. Julian as well, was determined largely by the sector and the location and production sites and geography of the markets that the enterprise work in, and whether their supply chains are kind of local or international. And basically, in the main, we found that those enterprises that are producing and selling locally are much less heavily affected, and obviously that has a huge upside for the climate as well. And then lastly, I think impact resilience is about whether an enterprise has strong links to its beneficiaries, and whether it is inclusive and is able to keep serving their customers and able to work in a way that they can keep doing that, for example, by being socially distanced or perhaps adding additional services. So we've seen a lot of enterprises that are using, for example, their applications or their channel to deliver health messages to farmers, for example. And so they're still able to kind of have value add. So if you go to the next slide, we kind of have a tool that I don't want to spend too much time on this, but we designed a small tool that enterprises can actually use to look at their 6 dimensions of their enterprise and basically rate them on a scale from 1 to 3. And the idea really being that, if you rate low, then you might want to have a look at the dimension of your enterprise and discuss with your team how you can sort of how you can be stronger in that area. And the feedback's been really good actually so far. So we're using it in some current workshops, resilience workshops in Zambia, alongside some other tools actually that help enterprises, for example, look at better financial planning for crises. So I'll give you a few examples of enterprises that are resilient, and on the next slide maybe. What does that look like? Or, some examples of enterprises, agricultural enterprises that kind of were easily changing their models or pivoting, as we call that. So Green Honey trains farmers to integrate beekeeping into crop farming as a way to basically reduce chemical use and increase crop yield. But they also sell those beekeeping products. And so they were really heavily affected by transport bans. And so they basically showed flexibility to overhaul their logistics, to work around COVID restrictions by bundling, going for bulkier deliveries, using emergency funding to purchase, other ways of transport, and also looking at other customer segments because they couldn't serve the ones they were currently serving. Farm Organic is based in Indonesia. And they train others in organic farming, and they have their own farm as well. And they already had an application where the people they worked with can manage and monitor their farm plots for water and harvesting, etc. So they then developed an additional possibility to basically make scheduling of workers' timetables possible to enable social distancing, which is quite interesting. And maybe shortly 2 other examples. So we have on the next slide, Gorilla Conservation, which is in Uganda. They're in sustainable coffee farming in Uganda, and they sell to tourists. And obviously their market completely collapsed when COVID hit. So they basically took the opportunity to actually build out their marketing to overseas buyers. So they now have a new buyer in the UK, basically tapping into people that still wanted to support them but weren't able to travel. And then they think Vang Thai, there is a business in Thailand. So they look at alternative paper packaging, which is made from agricultural waste, rice straw. And they're a good example of, they're located right next to their input materials and their labor source. So this proximity basically eliminated a lot of the logistical issues and supply chain issues that other farmers have during COVID-19. So, you know, what's the role of policymakers in all of this and encouraging resilience? And I think some of these recommendations are a little bit broader and probably hold beyond this crisis. But, you know, in systemic crisis, obviously the poorest and most vulnerable are most at risk. So we really think that supporting enterprises with economic and social and environmental value built into their models is really the way forward. And that's how policymakers can stimulate recovery across communities. But, you know, as part of this report that I was sharing a bit on, we identified some recommendations for how policymakers can support enterprise resilience. And so access to finance is always the #1 challenge for our enterprises cited, was no different in the crisis. And so to tackle ongoing, you know, this ongoing sort of fallout from the pandemic, but also look at future crises, we really need to look at, you know, very quick direct financial support for MSMEs to ensure that job keeping, as we know they have the majority of the jobs in economies today. Look at suspension, renegotiation of loans. Also look at, you know, ways in which that finance matches the agricultural cycle, you know, so when harvesting is done, et cetera, and, you know, government guarantees for low interest loans, so we get more commercial funding into this field as well. For obviously crises are here to stay. So, you know, crisis insurance for MSMEs could be interesting, where we're looking at, where we could look at insurance schemes that can be set up for MSMEs, for example, to insure against flood or drought. And then early warning systems, putting those in place so that, you know, MSMEs can better anticipate and plan for future climate-related shocks would be key as well. On local supply chain building, I think I already made the point that, you know, complex supply chain challenges, well, first of all, we would really advocate for more local supply chain, but we also need to collaborate within that. And that's an effort that enterprises can't do alone. So we need to be funding and supporting associations and government to set common standards and best practices for local supply and demand platforms. And I think Ms. Julian mentioned and made the point very well as well. We need to be looking at formalization of enterprises in agriculture so that they can actually access the support and financial and non-financial support that is available that they often miss out on. And then I think lastly there, digital skills building is key. It was already mentioned. You know, social distancing is here to stay. Zoom is too, I think. And then, you know, maybe a broader point, the ability for MSMEs to withstand crisis, we think really hinges on the choices that leaders make today. So government should really prioritize support of, you know, green social MSMEs and make sure that we're looking at, you know, the value they bring around employment and poverty reduction. And then to finish off, maybe to take a bit of a broader perspective around sort of green recovery, so beyond resilience. So a few months ago, SEED and the Green Economy Coalition did an exercise, and I think some of your colleagues joined, which is great, with local and international actors looking at what support is needed for MSMEs to assure a green recovery. And I think what emerged is quite a patchwork picture of support. So some local and some international, varying degrees of focus on traditional versus a green economic recovery. But what is very clear, though, were a few things that are needed by way of green recovery. So I think grant finance from government and private actors and de-risking, awareness raising with government and others on the value and role of SMEs and their contribution. And I think co-design on policy with SMEs, and then consistency on definitions and impact indicators so that we can really start illustrating the value that these agri and inclusive businesses bring. So let me just stop there and just say that, you know, the more resilience, the less the need for recovery, and looking forward to further discussions.
Thank you for an impressive presentation. You have made me really think how to better reach resurgence after, and you do have a lot of resources and expertise. I will be presenting a couple of questions that we have received while you were speaking. And again, you are in the UN family. And we celebrate very much that UN Environment, UNDP, and IUCN actually have continued to put resources into this. Let me now jump and offer the floor to our last but not least, to the next speaker. And after that, we will go to the question and answer. So I have the privilege of inviting Mr. Sriram Gopal, the founder and CEO of Future Farms, to now take the floor. Mr. Gopal. You are muted.
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Alex.
Pleasure.
It's an absolute honor and pleasure to be here and sharing the dais with so many dignitaries and panelists. I'm just trying to share a screen.
Yes, very good. We can see it now. Exactly, just a slideshow. Go ahead.
All right, wonderful. I want to share my entrepreneurial journey here. Just as a disclaimer, I'm an electronics and communications engineer by qualification. I have a degree in business, and I don't actually have a degree in agriculture, formal degree in agriculture. But what really got me started is this whole thought of this opportunity, and it's the way you look at it, because it's probably the world's largest problem as well that we are looking into. So by 2030, we all know that we have to almost increase our food production by 70%. And if that wasn't a challenge enough, our arable land is fixed, and every year, at least for the country that I come from, almost 2,000 farmers quit farming every single day. And every year the water table is depleting, the land for agriculture is shrinking, and rapid urbanization is happening. And they also say that within the next few years, almost 60% of the population are going to be in urban centers. So with all this happening, how is it actually going to be possible to feed so many people in the coming future? So this seemed like a very huge challenge and an opportunity. And being an entrepreneur, I was really excited with how I could make a difference in this space. But what really drove my passion towards what I started, and my company's name is Future Farms, and we're based out of India, is sometime a few years back, someone was speaking to me, and they told me that most of the food that we eat is either very low in nutrition value, or it's usually contaminated. And then another colleague of mine just jumped in and he said, hey, that's not a problem. You have so many options today. One can always go and choose organic produce. But while it sounded comforting, it also put a completely different thought in my head. Organic food is normally 3 to 5 times more expensive than conventional food. And if that is true, what we are actually accepting as a society is if you're rich, you can eat well. And if you're not, then you'll have to compromise. And that thought stuck with me really hard. And that was kind of the why, the reason why I ventured into my entrepreneurial journey in the agri space. And we as a company believe that clean food should not be a privilege, but it should be a fundamental right. And we also believe that being an engineer myself, technology can be a change agent, and technology can be used for good. And I can't agree more with my previous panelists who spoke about data-driven agriculture. And this is something that we took up as a tool for social change. And that's how we went about starting the company itself. What my company does is we address 2 segments in farming. And our focus area was very, very simple, because we all know agriculture is a large ocean. And for someone to make a meaningful dent in this whole lot, it will be much better to focus on a really small area. I come from a city, so I understand urban centers really well. And we thought, if we can empower people living in urban centers, and if we can create formats of agriculture where people can grow anywhere without much dependency on conventional factors, then this could make way for the future of agriculture. We know that only maybe thousands of corporates alone cannot work together to solve the growing food crisis. We need a whole army of urban farmers, micro farmers, so to say, who are able to produce food in shorter, underutilized spaces across the globe to be able to, solve this huge crisis. So we took this as our challenge, and we started developing solutions, keeping the urban farmer in mind. So when we talk about urban, when we pick a really small focus area, there is obviously a constraint, but there is also new opportunity that comes out of this. Because we are in urban centers, we don't have the issue of bad internet connectivity or availability to existing infrastructure, or the hyperlocal transportation issues which a conventional farm would face. So given this is a positive lever, what can we do with this? So we started building small modular system that can be deployed in parking lots, that can be deployed in rooftops, that can be deployed in any underutilized area, even within buildings. And then we quickly realized that the hardware alone will not solve the problem. We know that economics is one of the biggest challenges for people getting into entrepreneurship. But we noticed over the last 5 years that the knowledge barrier is also a huge problem when it comes to agriculture. So most people who are passionate about agriculture don't know how to start, what to grow, or how to grow. And there is not enough knowledge help that is available out there to assist them unless they go into formal agricultural education. So we took a slightly different approach to this. Instead of going and training them today to learn something, because most of these people were well into their adulthood and they were unwilling to learn new things, we said, if we could somehow take all that knowledge and compress it into a mobile phone or a small a $10 microchip, and kind of imagine a world where the entire agricultural exercise can be applianced. So put it in a funny way, you don't need to be a microwave engineer to operate a microwave. So if we can appliance agriculture to some extent, and we can compress all of this knowledge into an automated system, then you can create this farm in a box that can be a machine that is just given to farmpreneurs or entrepreneurs who simply have to pick and choose a set of buttons, and then the entire farming exercise is made easy. So we are taking the complexity out of farming out of the farmer's hands. And in order to achieve this, we started a bottom-up approach, and we started developing low-cost sensors, low-cost controllers, and we also started developing nano farms. These are usually 1/8 the size of a commercial farm, and these can produce hyper-local, high-quality, pesticide-free food, and they can be rapidly deployed within a couple of weeks in any given location. And we had formats which are completely indoor, and it can be using controlled environment within a greenhouse. And then we built this, so to say, an operating system which connected each of these farms. So imagine a world where thousands of these farms across the globe are connected into a single data platform. So it'll be like Uberization of farms. And what good can that bring to the world? Imagine a farmer who's deciding what seed he's going to sow. He can now, the system can tell him that out of the 1,000 farmers in his network, about 600 are already growing a particular crop. Maybe that crop is oversubscribed. And the system can actually suggest to this farmer saying, hey, why don't you grow this particular crop? Because there are too few people growing here. So this would, in a way, try and solve the excess production. It will eliminate wastage in food production. And it will also give better yield for the farmer. While we started this with this initiative, we also realized that these nano farms can also be deployed in conventional rural areas. I'll just state one case study here. There is a village called Kotagiri in India, which is a hill station where most of the rural farmers are smallholding farmers. They have land less than 2 acres, and their usual crop is tea plantations. So usually the man of the house, it's a family-run affair. The man of the house goes to the tea plantation and he plucks the tea. And their total land holding is about 40,000 to 80,000 square feet. What we realized is if we could deploy one nano farm in that entire 40,000 square feet for just as small as 5,000 square feet, which is 1/8 of that total land holding, the lady of the house can now also work on a cash crop, and the entire family income is instantly doubled. This 5,000 square feet of data-driven high-tech farm can give you the exact same yield of that entire 1 acre of tea plantation. And as a couple, they've also not only generated dual income, it also leverages them from any climate or any other market uncertainties. If the price of tea drops, they can sustain themselves with the horticulture crop. Our farms, which we have set across India and the Indian subcontinent, collect thousands of data points every given day. And we are slowly and steadily trying to build this knowledge repository. And our aim is to make this knowledge completely available to everyone, so that in some sense, almost like open sourcing this knowledge. So any aspiring urban farmer can simply tap into this knowledge pool and get started. So it kind of gives them a leapfrog on what they are trying to achieve. Now, COVID, as we all know, was not easy for any company. And being a very small startup, we also went through big challenges during this period. Unfortunately, I come from a country where the focus is heavily on conventional mode of agriculture. So whenever you are in a green field or a high-tech driven environment or a solution, you do not get the support that you need from the existing government mechanisms or infrastructure. I want to bring it on record that because our cause was so important, the kind of employees, the kind of teammates we had were all so passionate and committed to the cause that the entire organization agreed to take like a 70% pay cut for a whole year. So they were all living with a 30% of their actual salary, and we actually saw the pandemic through. But it was just not a company like only mine. We spoke to all of our urban farmers, and all of them were struggling because we were under complete lockdown. Much of the perishables, there were no logistics or transport, and no person in the city was able to have access to the rural farms as well. So this kind of gave a unique opportunity as well, because all our urban farms kind of started generating produce and the demand for them shot up, but there was no channelized way of solving this. So as a startup, again, we took this challenge as an opportunity and we pivoted slightly more, and we did a forward integration and we created a unified brand for all the urban farms. So we united all the urban farms, we collated all the produce, and we started selling these produce in the marketplace. The reception was great. All of the farms' produce were utilized, and we literally did not have any wastage of perishable goods during the space. Even after the lockdowns have been lifted, we see a steady growth in the numbers. And we did something very interesting. We told the consumers that they cannot choose the produce they are getting. We supplied them a bag of fresh horticulture crops every week, and we asked them to give up their right to choose of what they are going to get. Though it looks like a marketing challenge, it's a great initiative from a supply chain point of view. This meant that our farmers could plan 4 months ahead what they were going to plan with almost zero or minimal wastage of food. So I want to share this thought here so that more people can try these kind of methods to really try and convert these challenges and these difficult times into opportunities. Our motto: we need to win customers' love, the farmers' trust, and care for the planet. So that's what we as a company are trying to achieve. Thank you so much for this opportunity, and I look forward to interacting with you guys more.
Thank you, Mr. Gopal. Very inspiring and a best practice in itself. I had checked you, if I must confess, on LinkedIn and also at the university graduate testimonials page and a couple of videos. And I can only tell you that you indeed inspire me. I am an agricultural engineer myself, and I have always been asking for several years. I want the audience to hear this thing because I'm sure many of you listening have asked the same question over and over again. How can we, especially in developing nations like mine, I come from Ecuador, I say Latin America, how can we tell someone that is about to make the decision to buy seed, to do this crop, don't do it. There are too many people doing the same. The price is going to go down because of supply and demand. Do this instead. Nobody does that, at least not in our region, in our countries, because information is very limited. So here you're giving an example indeed with future farms, not only how to maximize space, how to get technology in, data-driven decision-making, hydroponics, and all these things that I saw on the internet and that you mentioned, but also you are telling people here, micro, small, and medium enterprises, that the adoption of technology and thinking outside of the box, this new model that you just showed us on how to go about producing and how to go about commercializing is possible. And that's why I wanted to thank you. Very good. We have just concluded then the panel, and we will also take two questions from the audience right now for both panelists that just finished, Ms. Walters and you, Mr. Gopal. To Ms. Walters, you mentioned correctly so that financing the recovery is critical and access to financing, right? And I read one of the comments from someone based in Nigeria that say, we in Africa have plenty of land, we in Africa have plenty of hands, maybe you also read it, but we don't have financing. And we in Nigeria, this person was writing correctly very much, it touched my heart, it happens the same in my country. He was saying, we have very many agricultural graduates that now have the knowledge, but they cannot have finance. So they can never become a micro entrepreneur, a small or medium enterprise when years pass by, because they could never begin. He actually wrote, you may saw, the agricultural bank in my country simply cannot give them loans, because the loans is for someone that already have the experience, that already have the credentials and so on. So how can we break this conundrum? We equip people, we have the land, we have the need, but we don't have the financing. Floor is yours.
Yeah, a couple of thoughts on that. So I really relate to this, and most of our enterprises' big problem is that they're so small that they don't have a track record nor collateral. So that's why we feel that international organizations like ours that give really, really small grants, I mean, we give small grants of €1,000, 10,000 euros max, right, to produce a machine or to buy some inputs. And I think it's absolutely key for those guys to get started. We also did a little bit of work with our enterprises on crowdfunding and kind of skills building for how you can do that, so that you can, you know, tap into a network that's beyond your own ones. And the other thing that I would say that, you know, I feel is a big gap is that we are not working directly with the enterprises to come up with instruments or finance instruments that they need. So we run a series of labs where we put together the enterprises and financial actors to actually look at what do these guys need, what are the ticket sizes, you know, and then I think we also need the wraparound support. So we need the financial literacy and the financial skills to then be able to manage the money coming in alongside.
Indeed, a good roadmap ahead of things that can be done. And very many people that hear these webinars, we know because we check the registrations, are government officials actually that get some ideas or some policy recommendations, some practical solutions just from listening. So thank you very much, Ms. Walters, for that to you. And then to go to Mr. Gopal. There are a couple of questions that I'm going to combine. One says, How do you overcome land use restrictions in urban areas to promote farming in urban settings using intense technology, right? And the other one says, basically, how illiterate are sometimes traditional farmers, how illiterate traditional farmers can make use of all these innovations when they don't have the capability to absorb technology. So how do we take all this technology down to the common man language? Mr. Gopal.
Yeah, so the first one is, yes, I think when you talk about urban farming, there are definitely some challenges in terms of setting up. At least in India, we don't have a policy for urban farming. Like there is even no mentioned size for urban farming. Like, is it 100 square feet? Is it 1,000 square feet, or is it 10,000? So there is no classification. So when there is no classification, obviously there are no policies to support that. Let's say the government wants to roll out a program to encourage urban farming. If you don't know who an urban farmer is, if you can't classify him, then you can't roll out any policy, right? Because anyone with a kitchen garden would say, I'm an urban farmer. So how do you classify, how do you differentiate a gardener from a farmer? And so those are definitely things that one needs to look at. The second challenge is, let's say rooftop farming. The liabilities associated with that, right? So when you're putting structures in the 8th floor or a 10th floor of a building, and then there was a cyclone, and then the structure gets uprooted, and then it falls on someone, God forbid, then what kind of insurance, what kind of any of the rules that bind all of these things. This is also very unclear at this moment. The only thing we can say is, like anything that is new and upcoming, we need to work closely with the think tanks and policymakers and educate them, and kind of raise awareness on the importance of sustainable food production. And I think every little thing counts. So and it's only during these calamities and these disasters do we realize the importance of these kind of micro pockets of food. And I think we should, as a community, take it more seriously and encourage the younger generation. And it could definitely be a huge revenue generating arm itself. It can create more jobs. In fact, it can really solve problems for the urban poor. And I often see all these parks that only focus on ornamental and aesthetic functions, but it can actually involve community in coming together and building the new food for tomorrow. As far as the second question, that's a very interesting question for us, because we've been working closely on the very same thing. Most of our farmers are illiterates. They don't have any formal education in this, and they are rural folk. So they are technology averse. So how do you get the urban or the rural undereducated person to adapt technology easily, right? The simplest thing is the example of the mobile phones. You have to expose them to the technology, and we as a company, we try to make everything pictorial. There are no writings, there are no labels, there are no instruction manuals. In fact, we have created an interface which simply contains 8 circles, and these circles are in greens and reds. Basically, the farmer will look at the red light and he'll know something's wrong with his irrigation. If the climate says red, then he knows something is wrong. Anyway, we don't expect the farmer to address it, but he at least knows that something's wrong so that he can ask for help. And if it's a green light, he can rest at peace thinking that all the critical parameters are good to go. So we are simply visualizing most of our farmers as young kids, and we are trying to build an interface where you don't need too much of a learning curve. So these are some of the experiments we are working on. I mean, it's a long journey, but yeah, that's a great question. And yeah, I think there are ways if we really put our mind to it.
Indeed, indeed. And to all of our panelists, the 4 of you, a great privilege for me to moderate this conversation. Very fresh, very unique, a lot of juices going, as they say in English. So unfortunately, we ran out of time. It's exactly 1 hour and 30 minutes, actually 1 hour and 33 minutes, but we still have to get to hear one very important message. And to give us some concluding remarks or thoughts, as usual, I would like to now offer the floor to Ms. Tatiana Krylova from UNCTAD to wrap up. Tatiana, please.
Thank you very much, Alex, and thank you for this excellent moderation of this very important topic. Before concluding, I just also want to make comments on this question that we just asked, particularly about this low level of literacy among farmers, including financial literacy. So this is something that we really have experienced at UNCTAD, dealing with these particular issues. And I mentioned EMPROTEC before and in previous discussions, because this is really, and just I would reiterate it again, a very powerful and a very effective tool to deal with a number of issues in entrepreneurship, including those that we're discussing today. And so in EMPROTEC, so we have a regular sort of, regular set of approaches to facilitate entrepreneurial potential, identify, diagnose, and unleash entrepreneurial potential of participants. And we have a subset of materials for low literacy people, because the motivation of entrepreneurs is the same, whether it's high level literacy or low level literacy, or even illiterate people. So because the EMPROTEC the EMPROTEC looks at entrepreneurship as a behaviors, some sort of a set of competences that are very important for entrepreneurs, not just to take entrepreneurial activity, but succeed in entrepreneurial activity. So that's why the same approach could be applied for people with high level education. And again, those even that who do not have education. Of course, having said that, it's clear that delivery methods are different, but the traits, these features, they are the same. So, and here just to again inform participants that such program exists. We have EMPROTEC in 40 countries, and of course we have counterparts in many more countries where we can join efforts and to deliver the program. Again, even with this emphasis for low literate people, we in particular focus on farmers or workers in the agriculture business. I already mentioned in the beginning, we also have a subset of material which is called farming as a business. But this is really technical skills development. Basically, the farming as a business, explaining in a very simple way, how really you make your business profitable. So how you cost your products. And actually, it's very specific because the costing is done actually with regard to particular products like avocado or banana or I don't know, any pineapple, any type of product which is more typical to this particular area. And we now updated these materials, in this COVID-19 context already, and translated it in English and Spanish, and maybe we'll be translating it in more languages. Actually, we do have these materials also in Swahili because we were implementing this project for a longer time in Tanzania. So this is really very important because it's very tailored to specific needs, but then also it embraces other things that are very important for entrepreneurs to succeed. Another question about financial literacy. How to make investors? I saw the question. How to make investors interested in your project? So this is the two questions here. First is to understand basic accounting numbers and financial numbers. How really you to ensure that you have your business profitable. In fact, we had a case when we did EMPROTEC for low literacy people in rural areas in Panama. There was a case where one participant who was an established entrepreneur, was in business for a long time in agriculture, but only through this workshop she discovered that actually while she was having revenues and cash flows, she didn't have profits. She was not aware of this. She was not aware that she was running a business that actually was not generating profits while it was generating cash. So these kind of things are really very important. And of course, when you show this sort of approach to investors, of course, they will not be interested because, they really need to understand, the recovery, the return, because in order for business to be in existence, it has to be self-sufficient in terms of financial terms. So, so this financial financial literacy is very important. And here I also want to bring to attention to participants that actually at UNCTAD a time ago, we developed a guidance on accounting for micro entrepreneurs. And so now we develop training materials, again, due to COVID-19 and thanks to the financing that we go through the SME search project, we developed further on, in more detail, in more simplicity, to explain to micro entrepreneurs, key basic considerations in accounting so that they really can help them to move slowly, maybe even to more sophisticated aspects of financial literacy, but starting with these, key steps. It's also available now in English and French, and we are delivered already several TOTs. And it was very interesting because we first started, of course, to deliver these workshops to trainers who are qualified people in the accounting area so that they really can be qualified to deliver further training to entrepreneurs. And we did not expect for any of those TOT to have more than 15 people. But in some cases, we had 250 people, which means that there is really a very huge demand. And there is also some sort of a capacity that could be used. I mean, I'm talking about trainers that could be used to facilitate this knowledge further. So we do have these materials and we will be delivering this further on broadly, but also through our Emprotech centers where we have them. So that's something that I wanted to stress because it is very much needed, and it's not so I mean, as we say, it's not a rocket science, so it's really something that needs concerted efforts of those who are in need of getting this information, these skills, but also, how to say, institutional stakeholders and of course, government agencies, but also associations of entrepreneurs. They really play a key role here. So it really requires systemic approach. Materials are there. So then we need to build on that. So that's what I wanted to say, just also commenting on the questions that were raised. So for me, I think that's all I wanted to say on this one. But as a closing, I really would like again to express appreciation to this excellent collaboration that we have with UNITAR and your team, Alex. It's really, a discovery thanks to COVID-19 in a way, because this is something that did not exist before, and this is really an excellent initiative. And Philippe is here also from UNCTAD, who helped to get it moving, and of course your team, Alex, and of course also panelists. And we were really very happy to have this excellent panel today. Particularly, I wanted to mention again Ms. Amala, because she's a winner of Emprotech Women in Business Award. She did mention these grants that she got from the government due to her publicity through the Women in Business Award initiative. Of course, due first of all to her efforts, but then again, that really helped to raise visibility. And I think the more activities we do of that nature, so then the more visible it would be, so that really entrepreneurs can make a difference. And then maybe really some efforts are needed, and the multiplication effect would be absolutely unbelievable. So then it's really very important that we move in this direction. So thank you so much for cooperation, and thank you, and of course participants, thank you for your questions. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. We wish you an excellent continuation of your day. Many blessings, and thank you so much for joining us today. This is the end of this webinar. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.